Hi everyone. I thought today we would watch a Bozeman Science video together. Mr. Anderson is one of the most knowledgeable teachers around, and so I thought it would be very beneficial to watch a video together on the respiratory system and sort of comment on it as we go through. Let's hit play.
Hi, it's Mr. Anderson, and welcome to my podcast on the respiratory system. Function of the respiratory system is basically to take in oxygen and then get rid of carbon dioxide. And right here in Montana at around 5,000 feet, that's no big deal. But if I were to climb Mount Everest, the higher I go, the less oxygen there's going to be. And that's a real limit to our ability to climb very high. And so it wasn't until 1953 that Sir Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay finally climbed Mount Everest for the first time. You can see Tenzing Norgay right up on top, the first photo ever taken from the top of Mount Everest. It wasn't until 1953, but if you can't see on his back, there's a huge canister that contains oxygen, and that leads into his mouth because they had to take oxygen with them. And so it wasn't until I think 1971 that somebody was able to climb all the way up Everest without using oxygen. And that they do that by going up to a base camp, move up higher, move down, move higher, move down, move higher, move down. And so their body's starting to accommodate to that change in the elevation. And even that, you're pretty much dying at the top because of that lack of oxygen. And so basically, animals have figured this out in a number of different ways. If you're a worm, your respiratory surface is actually going to be your skin. You're absorbing oxygen and getting rid of carbon dioxide through your skin. So their skin has to be moist, and they have to have a large surface area. If you're an insect, you use things called spiracles. So basically, there are holes on the side of an insect that go to tubes, that go to more tubes, and more tubes, and more tubes, and more tubes. And an insect actually has tubes that almost go all the way down to the level of cells. And so you have to have a huge surface area is one thing you need, and then it has to be moist is another thing. And so the two big things I want.
Okay, so I want to pause for a second and mention an additional something. So, with oil spills and different environmental toxins, things that are becoming a bigger problem as we continue, things like worms, but also things like amphibians who really exchange that oxygen throughout their skin. Oil spills are a huge problem because what that does is it actually coats over their skin and essentially suffocates them or ends their ability to be able to exchange that gas. And so it's a very big problem. Also with pollutants in water streams, anything that causes like a greasy thick sort of substance to coat their skin. Basically, we're suffocating these animals by polluting the water bodies, and so it's really got to stop. But I just thought maybe we could add in an environmental thing that we hadn't spoken about yet.
I want to talk about are gills. So gills is a way that fish have solved this problem. And then lungs, and that's the way that we've solved it. So what's the difference between fish and us? Well, fish live in an area that's really, really moist, so they don't have to worry about that. And so their gills just sit right out in the water. But they also live in an area where there's not much oxygen at all. So they have to have a very efficient way of exchanging oxygen. Us, well, we have to fold our lungs inside our bodies so we can keep them moist. But there's so much oxygen in the air relative to the amount that's in the water that we don't have to be as efficient. So how efficient do the gills actually have to be in fish? They can reclaim something like 80% of the oxygen that's in the water. So they're really, really efficient. We're not even close.
That's a lot.
And the way they do that is they use something called countercurrent gas exchange. And so basically, as the blood flows through the gills, the blood is going to flow like this. So all the blood is going to flow in this direction, and then it's going to flow out the other direction. So in the gills, it's flowing in that direction, and then it comes out in the other direction. But the water is going to flow in this direction. And so what you have is the blood flowing in this direction, and then you have the water flowing counter to that. And so as they go like that, it pulls water in over their gills, but the blood is moving in opposition to that. Engineers use countercurrent exchange quite a bit. But basically, what is it doing? Well, if you think about this is going to be the dirtiest of blood down here, and then it's going to get cleaner and cleaner. In other words, it's going to get more and more oxygen. But what it's doing is, as it gets more and more oxygen, it's meeting water that's more and more fresh. Or in other words, it has more of the oxygen present. And so by putting blood in the opposite direction, they're really efficient at getting that oxygen outside water. Now, us, we don't have that problem. We do have a problem with moisture. And so we actually have to fold our gills inside our body. They're not gills, but we fold our lungs inside our body. And so we have a trachea that leads down into bronchus and then bronchioles all the way down into the alveoli. One thing that's important to note is that it goes in and then that's it. In other words, it's one way flow. When we breathe in, it goes in, and then that's the end of it. And so if you take things in, like if you smoke, all the material that comes in is going to go into your lungs, and then there's no out. And so if you breathe a lot of coal dust, it's going to go in, and then it gets stuck in there. Or asbestos goes in and gets stuck. And so the lining of the trachea, lining of our respiratory system has these cilia on them. And so basically what happens is those little hairs are going to move material out of your body so you can cough it up and eventually swallow it. Another cool thing about this is it really looks, let's even go to this level. It almost looks.
Okay, so I want to go back to here. Um, so he mentioned the cilia, these little hair-like structures, and what happens when you smoke cigarettes is that the tar actually goes in there and it lays those cilia, those hair-like structures, it lays them down like flat, and it like tar is real gunky, and so it sticks them and coats them down, like it like glues them down. And so if you've ever heard of a smoker's cough or somebody making a joke about like, oh my gosh, you sound like you smoke, 2 packs a day. Well, what that actually means is that if you've ever been around a real smoker, um, they don't have the cilia to help them move all the phlegm and the tar and all the gunk that they take in out. Mucus, nothing. They don't have any of that ability to remove that from their body on their own without the aid of just like muscles. And so they cough so hard, just so, so hard. And so it's because they've damaged their little cilia.
Of your body so you can cough it up. It really looks, let's even go to this level. It almost looks like a tree upside down. And so basically what's happening is that we are increasing the surface area by having the trachea go to the bronchus and then the bronchioles, and then they just keep branching and branching and branching. Again, why are they doing that? They're doing that increase the surface area. And so your lungs are small, but I remember once reading that they have the surface area of a tennis ball.
What?
And so by having that large surface area, we can absorb even more oxygen. But the functional units of the lungs are the alveoli. So if we get way to the end of these tiny bronchioles, we eventually have these little sacs. They're called alveoli. They're covered
Alveoli.
in a single layer of cells called simple squamous cells. And
Oh,
they have a
sure.
tendency to just kind of fold in. Imagine a tiny balloon that's that small, it would just kind of fold in on itself. And so they have to have these chemicals, surfactants on the inside that kind of lubricate it so it doesn't
So remember, those are type 2 pneumocytes that make your surfactant.
close up. That's one of the reasons why premature babies have to be in a ventilator because they haven't really developed that surfactant. But
Sad.
wrapped around all the alveoli we have these capillaries. And so basically what's happening is that we're taking oxygen um, from the alveoli and we're passing that off onto these capillaries and then we're getting rid of carbon dioxide. That's the function of the alveoli. Now, how does breathing occur? Breathing occurs using the diaphragm.
Occur, occur, occur. How does breathing occur?
You've dealt with the diaphragm if you've ever had hiccups, because that's just a spasm in the diaphragm muscle. But basically, what happens is we have the diaphragm muscle here, and then as that contracts and pulls down, then we have air moving in. So it's like you had a jar with a balloon on the inside of it with rubber on this side. And if I were to pull right here, or pull that down, basically it's going to inflate the balloon because air is going to move in, decrease the pressure. And then as I relax the diaphragm, it's going to go like that. And as I contract the diaphragm, it's going to move up. It's very important that then, just like this jar, that this is very intact here. We have to make sure that this whole thoracic cavity is intact so we can create that pressure. Okay, so let's get to the level of that oxygen exchange. So how do we
This is
get
so
oxygen
cool.
in? Well, basically, if you were to look here in the capillaries, let's imagine that this out here is the space in the alveoli. So now we have air coming in.
Alveoli.
Air right here. Basically, what's going to happen is these red blood cells are going to move through the capillaries. That oxygen that's inside the alveoli is going to move in. And so these red blood cells are almost in direct contact with the capillaries. Now, where is the oxygen going to be stored? We have a chemical called hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is a protein, and that's stock full inside of all of our red blood cells. That's why it's red. So basically, inside the hemoglobin, we have these iron molecules, one there, one there, one there, one there. And that iron is going to bond to the oxygen that's found inside the air. And so, why is it red? It's because it literally is rusting. Oxygen is attaching to the iron.
What? Our blood is red because it's literally rusting. That's crazy.
Even though it's that red color. And so that's where the oxygen is going to bind. It's going to bind to the heme group or the iron inside the hemoglobin. What about the carbon dioxide? Well, the carbon dioxide is not really contained within the red blood itself. Basically, what it's doing is it's being converted to bicarbonate. We're converting that carbon dioxide with water to this bicarbonate. And a lot of that bicarbonate will actually be right here inside the plasma of the blood. Some of it will be in the blood cell, but most of it's in the blood. When we get here to the alveoli, we've got enzymes that control all of this, and that's going to release as carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide goes back into the alveoli, and we breathe that out and take in more oxygen over and over and over again. Cool. And so that's the respiratory system. It doesn't work if we don't have the circulatory system, but we'll get to that.
Awesome. All right. I'll continue to make videos, but I thought this one was really, really good. So thank you for joining me for watching it in our little watch party.